The sun is acting completely crazy right now. For years, scientists thought our home star was entering a period of calm, but the opposite is true. NASA is shocked because the sun is currently behaving completely differently than predicted.
What's behind this? And what does the looming extreme activity mean for us here on Earth? Be sure to stick around until the end for spectacular footage of the sun. A warm welcome, everyone.
Who among you was lucky enough to see the northern lights last year? Due to increased solar activity, they were visible much further south than usual. Feel free to write about it in the comments.
Maybe we'll be lucky with the northern lights again soon. If you don't want to miss it, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Subscribing is free. You'll never miss anything again.
And you're helping me enormously, thank you very much, folks. But now to the sun. Our sun follows an approximately 11-year cycle. In this rhythm, its activity fluctuates between quiet phases, known as solar minima, and active phases, known as solar maxima. During a solar maximum, we see significantly more sunspots on the surface of our star. These dark areas are zones of intense magnetic activity and often lead to powerful solar storms that can produce spectacular auroras on Earth. Here you can see me shivering in the cold in Tromsø as I admire the auroras. I highly recommend this trip.
Unless you want to have a beer, then you'll go broke in Norway. But the sun also has even longer cycles that span decades. Between 1645 and 1715, for example, the sun experienced what is known as the Maunder minimum,
a phase of exceptionally low activity. Something similar happened between 1790 and 1830 during the Dalton minimum. At the beginning of the 21st century, astrophysicists also observed a steady decline in solar activity. Everything pointed to the sun entering another deep solar minimum.
Then everything turned out completely differently. NASA now had to admit that they were completely wrong.
A groundbreaking NASA study recently published in astrophysical journal Letters shows that solar activity reversed completely unexpectedly around 2008. Instead of becoming quieter, the sun is waking up and becoming increasingly active. Jamie Jasinski of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory sums it up. All signs pointed to the sun entering an extended period of low activity. So it was a surprise to see this trend reverse. The sun is slowly waking up.
The researchers reached this conclusion by analyzing data from two NASA heliophysics missions, the Midvans Composition Explorer and the WIND mission. Both spacecraft were launched in the 1990s and have since meticulously documented the flow of plasma and high-energy particles from the sun to the Earth.
The numbers speak for themselves. The current solar cycle has shattered all predictions. The official solar maximum was forecast for October of this year, but activity is exceeding all expectations. For months, the number of sunspots was twice as high as predicted. In August, scientists recorded the highest average daily sunspot number in almost 23 years. Since 2019, the beginning of the current cycle, the average number of spots has been at least 33% higher than in the previous cycle. But that's not all. Not only has the number of sunspots increased, their size is also impressive. One of the sunspots, designated AR3354, was about 10 times wider than our Earth and formed within just 48 hours. Such gigantic sunspots are often associated with particularly powerful coronal mass ejections. These CMEs, as astronomers abbreviate them, are enormous clouds of charged particles that are hurled into space and then race toward the planets. It becomes particularly spectacular when several such CMEs occur in succession. Researchers have identified cannibal CMEs in this cycle. In this process, a faster CME overtakes a slower one and literally devours it. The result is an even more massive and energetic storm hurtling toward Earth. NASA's Parker Solar Probe recently flew directly through one such cannibal CME and collected valuable data. The measurements confirmed the worst fears. These storms are incredibly intense.
If such a superstorm were to hit Earth, it could have consequences similar to the famous Carrington event of 1859. Back then, the geomagnetic storm was so intense that auroras were visible in Havana and Rome. Telegraph lines burst into flames because the energy from the solar wind was so high.
In today's technology-dependent civilization, such an event would be even more devastating. In addition to CMEs, the current cycle has also produced a record number of solar flares. The most dangerous of these are known as X-class flares. This year alone, there have already been 11 such mega eruptions. The total number of all types of flares has risen from about 400 in 2020 to nearly 3,000 this year. These eruptions can cause radio blackouts, disrupt satellite communications, and deform the Earth's atmosphere. Scientists have also observed completely bizarre structures on the sun during this cycle. One of them has been dubbed the Beast, a gigantic shape-shifting plasma cloud about 13 times the size of Earth hovered over the sun's surface for hours. To date, there is still no truly convincing explanation for the phenomenon. Added to this is a massive polar vortex that formed at the sun's north pole and raged for 8 hours. These observations all show that the sun is currently more active than it has been in decades. What does this mean for us on Earth? In the near to medium term, we will see more auroras in regions that are normally too far from the north or south pole. But there are also less pleasant consequences. The increased solar activity is heating the upper atmosphere, the thermosphere. This causes it to expand, which is a problem for satellites in low Earth orbit. The increased air resistance can cause them to lose altitude and fall back to Earth. This is exactly what happened to 38 Starlink satellites during a geomagnetic storm in 2022. But the million-dollar question is, why is the sun behaving so unexpectedly?
This is where things get really interesting. New research from the Parker Solar Probe has confirmed a decades-old theory.
Solar flares and coronal mass ejections are caused by magnetic reconnection. This process breaks up magnetic field lines and reconnects them in new arrangements, releasing enormous amounts of energy. Scientists have also discovered that the sun's magnetic field does not originate deep inside, as long assumed, but surprisingly close to the surface, only about 30,000 kilometers below the surface. Another fascinating discovery concerns the sun's differential rotation. The equator rotates faster than the poles, approximately every 24 days compared to 34 days at the poles. New theories suggest that deep sound waves inside the sun control this rotation and thus significantly influence surface activity.
But the most intriguing explanation for the current solar activity comes from a study on long-term solar cycles. In addition to the well-known 11-year cycle, there is also the 22-year Hale cycle and the so-called centennial Gleisberg cycle, which lasts about 80 to 100 years.
Several studies in recent years suggest that this 100-year cycle has just restarted. This would explain why the previous cycle was so quiet. It marked the end of the Gleisberg cycle, and now with the restart, Earth could experience decades of increased solar activity. Researchers assume that the maximum of this long cycle will not be reached for another 40 to 50 years. Solar activity could then be at least twice as intense as this year, with twice as many auroras. As Jamie Jasinski points out, the longer-term trends are much less predictable and something we don't yet fully understand. To unravel these mysteries, NASA will launch 3 new missions focusing on space weather in the coming weeks. The Interstellar Mapping and Acceleration Probe will study the solar wind. The Carruthers Geocorona Observatory will explore how the Earth's outermost atmospheric layer responds to solar activity. And SWFOL1 will collect real-time data on the solar wind around the clock.
So, the coming years promise not only spectacular celestial events, but also groundbreaking scientific discoveries about our home star. So make sure to stay tuned and subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss any of these fascinating developments. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up to help boost the YouTube algorithm.
And while we're on the subject of spectacular discoveries, the next video is about something just as fascinating. A mysterious city has been discovered at the bottom of the sea that is 1,000 years old and, most incredibly, could even contain the tomb of the legendary Cleopatra. Click on the video in the top right corner to learn more about these sensational archaeological discoveries. As always, you'll find another exciting video in the bottom right corner. Otherwise, I'd say see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.